This is a list of 20 interesting facts about the origins of Call of Duty Zombies that I'm guessing you probably don't know. Let's jump into it. Number 1. Did you know that power-up drops nearly got completely cut from the game in World at War? Power-ups nowadays are obviously so rewarding, especially when the stars align and you get a clutch nuke when you're the last one alive, or you finally get that max ammo that you're just desperate for. But up until the final week or two before the Treyarch team had to submit the final version of Nachtrun Toten, they still didn't have power-ups in the game. It was a game time, last-minute decision because Jesse Snyder, who was really pushing the zombies mode forward at Treyarch, had been advised against adding them to the game. But right at the last minute, he went with his gut feeling that they'd actually be fun, and so they squeezed them in, and those 4 classic power-ups, nukes, max ammos, insta-kills, and double points, have been in every single map since then. Number 2. Did you know about the game which directly inspired Call of Duty Zombies in the first place? So I mentioned this dev, Jesse Snyder, right? Before World at War came out, there were various different ideas for what would make the best co-op mode to add to the game, and Jesse was focused on creating a tower defense mode. Now, it's crazy to think about what life would have been like if we got a tower defense instead of zombies as we know it today, but it could have gone that way, because Jesse was building a lot of the systems that we're familiar with these days to put in the tower defense mode. So it needed points, it needed a meaningful way to spend those points, it needed a survival aspect. And what happened is a co-worker showed Jesse a tower defense flash game that did all of those things really well, called The Last Stand. It was a zombies game with wave survival, a points economy, barricades to keep the zombies out, and a lot more familiar features. And after playing just a couple of waves of Last Stand, Jesse realized, oh, this could work incredibly in Call of Duty. And so, from that inspiration, he started building a prototype. And a few months later, he showed everybody, and the rest of the dev team fell in love with it instantly. Number 3. Did you know the original models for power-ups were not a skull or a ×2 or an ammo box? What actually happened originally at the very beginning is that Jesse Snyder, who I just mentioned, scripted the 4 core power-ups in a single day, and so he just slapped random models on, which he felt were acceptable to feel power-uppy, but they didn't really represent the things that they did. So let's play a little guessing game. Let's see if you can guess which each power-up was based on the placeholder model, okay? First of all, a tea kettle. What does it feel like a tea kettle is? Second, a crow. I wonder what that might do. And the third was a rat. So make your guesses, and I'll now reveal that in the same order, that was double points, insta-kill, and max ammos. Nukes, however, were always just the little kaboom nukes. Those didn't change. Number 4. There are actually loads of hidden cheats inside World at War's PC Zombies mode, and some of them are really, really cool. So there's this one which lets you modify the gravity to be as weak as the moon or as strong as a super magnet. There's another one that lets you modify perks. So for example, double tap can be altered to shoot rounds even faster than the game can process. And beyond that, using the give all command gives the player every single weapon on the map, even unused ones which aren't meant to ever be found. And when the community discovered this, they obviously went crazy because, for example, in this list of hidden weapons that people were unlocking right when the game came out, you could find a preview of a future pack-a-punched weapon. It's a Colt that shoots grenade projectiles, and obviously we're all familiar with the fact that later on that would become the upgraded version of the starting pistol. And keep in mind, this is before the pack-a-punch machine was even designed. The pack-a-punch was debuted many maps later, so pretty cool that we had our first papped weapon before we even had a pack-a-punch. On top of that, there are also some weapons in the game that aren't in the box on Nacht or on the wall, like they're just not meant to be accessible. But I think the weirdest one is this funky finger gun. Now, to be clear, it's very bad, and I don't really know why it's in the game, but yeah, it's a thing. Now, for a little bonus fact here, another thing that got found in that hidden weapon list was a pair of zombie arms called brains. And those brains had full zombie attack animations in first person, and Jimmy Zielinski, the old creative director at Zombies at Treyarch, actually commented on this. He said that Treyarch toyed with the idea of the player being a zombie, and they had a pretty compelling implementation of the player being a zombie pretty early in development, but unfortunately, for technical reasons, they weren't weren't able to ship those features, and they never really revisited it because they were just so busy making DLC. So that means that the Black Ops 2 Zombies Turned mode was pretty much in development from day one, which is crazy to think about. Number 5. The animations of zombies are fantastic in my opinion, but the reason they're just so good is actually because the Treyarch team got really lucky one day while they were capturing the animations themselves. So Jesse Snyder gave Jimmy Zielinski, who was actually at the very beginning the lead animator of the team, not creative director, a list of zombie animations that he needed for the mode. And once Jimmy received the list, he said, "No worries, I got you. I'm gonna get some zombie animations for you captured on the side during our next mocap session." But with an incredible stroke of luck, one of the actors present that day happened to be a Universal Studios zombie actor who acted as a zombie all the time. And so they had already had all of that experience in learning to be a realistic zombie, and they could apply that to the capture of the animations and just make it feel that much more authentic. Number 6. Did you know that the ray gun wasn't actually made for zombies? Originally, the ray gun was created by a Treyarch weapon designer in their free time as a fun side project. And it just so happened that that designer decided to show Jesse what he had created. And immediately, obviously, Jesse was like, bro, this would be perfect for zombies. And so he gathered other talent at Treyarch and had the ray gun fully animated, had it polished, and hooked up correctly to all the game's systems to make it the first ever wonder weapon in the game. And there's actually a secret Easter egg attached to the ray gun, which references the original dev that designed it. So when you upgrade the gun, you'll see that its name is Porter's X2 ray gun, which is referring to Max Porter, who was the original designer of the weapon. Number 7. Did you know that we also didn't have nearly as much gore in zombies? So back during World at War, dismemberment in multiplayer and campaign was a big deal, but exploding heads weren't part of the main game because it was just a bit too much. But obviously, it made perfect sense for that to be in zombies. So Jesse got to work and he figured out how to hack in head jibbing through the scripting system. And that meant that we could get our exploding heads. But there was an unintended side effect that made the game even more gory, which is that after the zombies' heads exploded, they would continue to attack you. And it was an accident. The team thought it was incredible though, and so they went, you know what? It was a bug at first, now it's a feature. Number 8. You might assume from how the games industry works these days that all of the sounds of any kind of humanoid creatures you find in the zombies mode are made by professional voice actors and things like that. But in zombies, some of the guys at Treyarch would actually hop on the mic themselves to record the zombie sounds.
One of the things that we do is we'll get into our own sound booth there and we'll just go up to the microphone and go, okay, start recording, and all right, here we go.
And this was actually the genesis of one of our fan favorite characters. This is a well-known story, really. But back then, the zombies community thought that they could hear a zombie saying, Sam. And they thought, wait, does that mean that there's a character called Sam? And the devs then saw the community talking about that stuff and decided that Samantha Maxis should indeed be a character. Number 9. Mario Kart was actually a really big inspiration for COD Zombies. I know that sounds unbelievable, but can you guess why? So if you never played it before, first of all, what the hell are you doing? Second of all, Mario Kart has a box you can get during gameplay that gives you a random power-up. And Jesse knew that zombies needed to have some kind of randomness plus strategy to make the game more interesting. And so from thinking a whole lot about how to get better at Mario Kart, Jesse thought, you know what, I'll add a similar box system into zombies, but I'll put it in a fixed part of the map and I'll obviously put it in the theme of the mode. And so he created the mystery box, which we all know and love today, and he originally called it the Mario Kart box. So that game had a really weirdly big impact on zombies without the Nintendo devs, I'd imagine, ever really knowing about it. Number 10. Jesse had some really great ideas for zombies, except for this one feature that would never return. So we have a point system from shooting zombies, rebuildable barriers that can give you points, doors and debris that you can spend points on, wall weapons you can buy, a mystery box filled with other weapons that otherwise wouldn't be attainable, and those things are all core parts of Narc's identity. But there was one thing on Narc which was never brought back. There's a cabinet you can buy for 1,500 points. And it gives you one of the worst weapons in the game, but it has a scope. He did beef up the damage a bit when he coded this into the game, so that's good, I suppose. But for 1,500 points to get a Car 98K is a travesty. And this meant that it was just crazy unpopular, and the cabinet never returned ever again. Now, for a little bonus fact here, it turns out that when you're playing the game on mobile, they realized that giving a player a scoped Car 98K wasn't actually a power weapon at all. It was quite the opposite. It was impossible to use with touch controls, and so they replaced it with a flamethrower in the cabinet for 2,000 points, which I think is a much better deal. But I honestly wish that they'd done something more with the cabinet back then to make it harder to get to, maybe 5,000 points or 10,000 points, and who knows, maybe it could have contained a PTRS or something. Number 11. A huge part of zombies nowadays are Easter eggs, whether they're full-on side quests or just little secrets scattered around the maps. And honestly, there aren't many secrets on Narked, other than maybe the chalk on the walls or the help room door or whatever, but that didn't stop people from speculating and hoping to find secrets while playing. At the time, there were theories that you could shoot the soldier's helmet on the ground near the box to get a ray gun every time. And there were also weird, superstitious rituals, like running in circles or spinning and jumping in a certain way to get the ray gun every time. And because these methods obviously had occasional success, the rumors would just get perpetuated and people really started believing them. But it wasn't just the player base that kind of went crazy about all this stuff, because the marketing team at Call of Duty were also really into Easter eggs and sort of discoveries at the time, and so they made a pretty unhinged decision. They knew the zombies was really fun, but they weren't sure what response they would get from the community if they saw zombies in Call of Duty without playing it first. They decided to just straight up avoid marketing the zombies mode, and they wanted players to discover it naturally and be surprised by it instead. And so they made it so that the zombies mode was a reward for you beating the campaign, which meant that the most dedicated players would then get onboarded to it first. And as soon as that kind of flywheel started, people actually started requesting they get rid of the campaign requirement because they didn't want to have to wait for their friends to finish the campaign in order to play zombies with them. So they eventually did remove the restriction. Number 12. The devs faced a problem when making zombies about what would happen if a player downed inside a doorway. Reason being, if the player was in co-op, they might be able to block the doorway and therefore block zombies from being able to travel through doors indefinitely. And so what they did is they made it so that zombies could push the player. But that simple feature actually had massive consequences for the way that zombies interacted with players even when they were still alive. So if you think back to the times you might have played World at War or seen World at War gameplay, if you've ever seen a player look like they're kind of getting hugged by a zombie, like they go past the zombie but they kind of gravitate towards it, they're magnetized to it, and they're slowed down a lot as they go past, that's caused by this feature they put in to allow zombies to push the player. And it's the same reason why if you melee a zombie, you're very likely to kind of get stuck to it, and you're 2 hit downs in World at War, so you're in a very risky position if that does happen to you. And the wildest thing about all of this is that Treyarch could have super easily fixed this. And some people in the custom zombies community actually have done. It all comes down to one line of code being different. So it's this function called push_player, and you just have to switch that from true to false. And boom, the problem is solved. It's magical. Number 13. At the game over screen on Narked, a sick guitar riff from Kevin Sherwood plays. And for those of you that are truly hardcore fans, you might already know that that same guitar riff is a section of the Verrückt Easter egg song. But it wasn't always a full-on Easter egg song. It was actually just a sick riff that they thought sounded cool for that Narked game over screen. But people liked it so much and wanted more of it that Kevin Sherwood and the sound team decided to turn it into a full-length song for Verrückt, and they made it an Easter egg reward. This then turned into a tradition to have a unique Easter egg song on every map.
What? Are they gonna put a music Easter egg in every map now?
And in doing so, another tradition was born to have a game over screen featuring a riff from the next Zombies Maps song. So that'd mean that with every map that came out, we would get a glimpse of the future whenever the game ended, which I think was actually really cool. Zombies was all about speculation at the time, and so hearing a crumb of what was to come later down the line was just really appetizing. Great job, Treyarch. Number 14. Do you ever find it odd that you'll be playing a COD campaign and your character will just never respond to the constant barrage of dialogue coming your way? Voiceless protagonists were all Call of Duty had until the zombies team decided that they'd had enough with this. And this was a big thing back in the day in the games industry at large, but zombies was breaking from tradition here. So in Verrückt, our crew is still just a group of Marines, but this time they decided to give them voices. And they realized, hold on, it's going to be weird if you can just hear the other players talking, but you can't hear yourself talking back. And so for the first time ever, they created first-person character dialogue, and they'd never done that before in COD history, which is really cool. That same tech would later be used to give Alex Mason a voice in the Black Ops 1 campaign, and the game was way more engaging because of that.
Kiss my ass!
But with the introduction of this system, a new problem was discovered, which is that these Marines in Verrückt all kind of sounded the same, so you didn't actually really know if it was you talking or somebody else, and because of that, they decided to make a crew of extremely exaggerated stereotypes in Shi No Numa, and bingo, we got our new Ultimus crew. Number 15. Verrückt did a lot of things first for zombies, as we just learned, and some of those things included bringing a power switch, traps, and perks to zombies. Now, since this was the first time that perks had ever made an appearance, the team weren't really sure what the appropriate power scaling would be for all of them, mainly for Juggernog, and seeing as Verrückt is one of the hardest, most claustrophobic maps ever, they decided to just really amp up the power. So Jug on Verrückt is so strong. I mean, gameplay speaks for itself. Like, it's going to take a lot of hits to kill you. And this is because Jug not only had increased total health, but it also made you regen health really, really fast, which a lot of people don't know. And so if there is only one zombie left alive, there's actually a chance that it just can't kill you, unless it happens to get several windmills on you in a row, in which case, yes, that will exceed the rate of recovery that you have from Jug, and so it can still take you down in theory. But because of this, right, because of the variability, it made health feel kind of inconsistent. Like one moment you could take 20 hits from a single zombie in fairly rapid succession and not die, and then later you could die to 5 hits or 8 hits, whatever it might have been, and you would die. But this apparently wasn't a problem for the Treyarch team, and Jug has the exact same properties in Shi No Numa. Number 16. Remember how I mentioned that they had this function in the game called push player, and that it literally meant zombies could push you around and hug you and suck you in when you tried to melee them and all that stuff? Well, players found out they could actually exploit that when paired with the overpowered version of Jug, and the combination would allow them to get out of maps. Specifically, on Shi No Numa, there were a bunch of different spots that you could use to get out of the map. And what needed to happen first is that there needed to be a bunch of sprinting zombies hoarded up, and then you'd keep jumping and let them push you up and out of the map. And your Jug would keep healing you, so you'd be able to survive while doing this. Then you could just free roam. It was totally broken, and it was only possible thanks to Jug. Number 17. So during World at War, zombies was finding its identity, right? And the devs quickly realized that the game would feel much better with some breaks in the monotony of endless zombie rounds. And the solution to that was Hellhounds. So they introduced the hounds in Shi No Numa, but Shi No Numa wasn't actually meant to be the first map with Hellhounds. Jimmy Zielinski actually confirmed that they made Hellhounds for Verrückt.
When dogs first made it in, which dogs shipped on Shi No Numa, but we had actually had dogs in Verrückt.
Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they probably didn't ship Verrückt with dogs just because of time constraints, but honestly, I think Verrückt benefits from not having dogs because the map wants to make you feel uncomfortable and never give you a break in the gameplay, and maybe dogs would have kind of hindered that a little bit. Number 18. This one is just a little bit of trivia for you. Which was the first ever zombies map to add super sprinters? I'll let you think about it for a moment. When did we get super sprinters? The answer is actually all the way back in Verrückt. If that map wasn't creepy enough and difficult enough, the fact that zombies can chase you down like crazy as well just adds to the melting pot of bad things happening to you. But honestly, it fits the vibe perfectly, so I'm glad that they're there. Now for a little bonus. So the devs were always listening to fans and their theories about zombies when it started, and they evolved the game based on community sentiment. An example of this is a character called Sam appearing, like I mentioned earlier. And back on Shi No Numa, once they set up this cast of voiced characters, they decided they also wanted to add some secret radios to contribute to a wider story. So they added that in as an Easter egg in that spawn room and various places around the map. The telephone one is particularly creepy. And they also added the hanging man, Peter, in the spawn room with his very own radio message left for him.
I hope you're receiving this transmission, Peter. If you are not, then all is already lost. You must know by now that we failed to contain the asylum and that we had to move the experiment here. Implication. The number
Now, the devs added all these things because they were trying to go back and forth with the community, right? They were trying to riff on the community's ideas and constantly surprise people and inject those ideas from the community into the game. But did you know that the hanging Peter McCain body actually has an alternate purpose in World at War? You see, the body could be moved around by throwing grenades at it, and if you ran and jumped into the body, there was a chance that it would actually insta-kill you and your game would end. It was the devs' way of saying, don't mess with Peter, I suppose? But it meant there were so many community theories back in the day about what the reasoning behind it all was, and it was just a ton of fun. Number 21. So we've talked a lot about little Easter eggs and secrets and hints for people to theorize about in Shi no Numa, but that got even crazier in Riese. So on Riese, there's photographs of a lighthouse, which probably is indication that they were planning Call of the Dead, which was originally planned for World at War. And there's also references to Paris, which is the origin really of the Paris catacombs zombie map theory. Now, sadly, we never got that map, but the truth is they were making a Paris map, but then they just said it wasn't epic enough and they decided to change that map into Moon, which we got at the end of Black Ops 1. Now, alongside these smaller Easter eggs, Riese is also the first map with an Easter egg quest, I would say. It's obviously not Ascension level, that's the first full Easter egg quest with full rewards, but the quest on Riese is the fly trap. So you shoot this fly trap with a pack-a-punched weapon, and then you shoot 3 objects around the map that Samantha has left for you, and then you get nothing. Samantha just goes game over and she's sad, I guess. And this is crazy nostalgic for me. I look back on this very fondly. And if you're in the same boat, maybe consider hitting the like button and subscribing for more videos like this. Wouldn't that be crazy? Or if you're seeing the fly trap for the first time, sub so you can learn more zombies facts like this in the future. How does that sound?